So if you really think about a fiat currency, it's really not even money because true money is value absent debt. So the only thing on the earth is like that right now was gold. Before Bitcoin was gold.
Oliver Daniels in the house.
Yes, yes.
So Oliver and I go back a long time, but this is something I've been excited about, is talking about sort of his Bitcoin journey. We've crossed paths a little bit on the subject, but I brought you on to just hear your story, and I think it's interesting how it pertains to your vocation. You know, I know you've got an impressive career with SMUD, and you're in charge of a lot of people and a lot of things there. So maybe I'll just start, Oliver, with if you could sort of go through what you do for a living, talk about your career, brag a little bit, and then we'll get into how you got into Bitcoin, crypto, and just kind of go down the rabbit hole.
Awesome, man. That sounds good, man. Thanks for having me. And I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk about Bitcoin, something I'm really passionate about. And kind of going through my story, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it, I've been in technology, so I'm into technology. I started programming computers when I was 10 years old, when I didn't even know it was a job. I just kind of got access to this computer, was going to a low-income school, and it just kind of came naturally to me. And then it's funny story is I didn't even realize it was a job until I got into college and I had to pick my concentration. And I kind of was looking at the concentrations, and I got a degree in management information systems. And I was reading through it, and I was like, man, this is stuff I've been doing for fun my whole life. And I couldn't believe it. So fast forward 20 plus years, I've been in my current current job at SMUD. And I've been doing software. So I've been more on the software side of things. And throughout this journey, again, leading up to my kind of how I got into Bitcoin and where Bitcoin kind of plays into my life, obviously the technology piece of it, but I've also been always intrigued about finances, investing, the economy. One of my choices for a career before technology was I wanted to be a stockbroker. I always was just intrigued by being a stockbroker, loved how just the financial system worked, because I'm the type of person I love numbers. I'm a math guy. I like numbers, and I like to see how things move around in that world. So fast forward, graduated, started working, and so I always kind of stayed as a hobby into stocks, understanding the economy, keeping up with politics, because all this stuff is interrelated. And where my Bitcoin journey, I say, really started is because I was into these stocks, and in 2008, I was into real estate. I had a house in 2008, and when the market crashed, I was kind of following the whole market and seeing like, wow, like the Dow Jones and the S&P, they crashed like ridiculously up high percentages. And I didn't have enough money at the time to put money in, because I was like, this is the time, like I need to throw all my money into this thing, but I didn't have any money. And I remember the Dow, one of the two, it went from like 18 to 20,000. It was down to like 6,000 or something like that. It was like, they were sub 10,000. And I was like, man, this is going to go back up. It's going to go back up. Missed my opportunity. No, I didn't miss the opportunity. I wasn't ready. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to be ready. And we all know that Bitcoin was born in that time. So I totally understood the concept of Bitcoin, because, again, following the economy, seeing these big banks, and when you in the news, they were like, oh, these big banks are going to fail. And I was just thinking, I'm a businessman. I was just thinking, oh, man, these banks are going to collapse and new banks are going to come up. But then I start hearing, oh, the government's going to bail them out. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm going to pay my taxes, pay 600 billion or whatever to these guys that did bad business. So immediately when Bitcoin came out, I totally understood it. I was like, now again, it was novel. I didn't know it was going to be what it is today, but I knew Bitcoin back then. I knew the technology. I knew about blockchain. I knew about cryptography. I had wrote cryptography programs myself, so I totally understood it. And I was like, yeah, I can see that. I was like, yeah, I can see that happening one day. But again, I had no money, and it was super early, so it was kind of novel. So the funny story is, so fast forward to maybe around 2009 or so, I have a lot of IT friends, obviously, and like I said, I was on the software side. They're on the hardware side, networking. So they were into like mining, because it was like their hobby. So they would like invite me over. We just as friends, and they'd be like, oh yeah, let me show you my mining rigs, and I was interested in that stuff. So we'd talk about the mining rigs and all this and that. And they'd say, hey Oliver, you want me to send you some Bitcoin, like show you how it works? And I was like, yeah. I said, yeah, we'll do that sometime. So it's like literally, I could be a millionaire right now, dude. Just a millionaire.
Totally.
Totally. So that was a pretty funny story. So then, so that was my first reckoning with Bitcoin where I should have got in. But again, I was in the equities at the time, and again, no one knew where it was going, and it was just a thing where I was like, yeah, that's gonna be something someday. So then maybe another 6 years later or something like that, my younger brother, who wasn't really into finance like me, but he's a guy that he's more into like conspiracy theory stuff, and he really like digs into like just government stuff. So he started getting into Bitcoin and cryptos, and he was telling me about it, and I was like, oh yeah, I know about Bitcoin, yeah, I know all about it, blah blah blah. But I'm gonna keep messing with these equities, and he's like, hey man, I'm getting in, I'm gonna start messing with it. So he's doing. My brother's doing pretty good. He actually sold a house back then, and he put some. I don't know how much Bitcoin he has, but he sold a house and put some money in Bitcoin. I know he's probably further along than I am. So that was the next time, and I was like, man, I really have to look into this Bitcoin now because again, the economy's starting to go bad. I already understood what Bitcoin was about and what it was for, and I started just feeling like, man, the time is coming, dude. Like the time is coming, and another thought I had was, people in my generation, like Generation X, and I would even say like the millennials, we can understand like our parents had the opportunity to do things like buy real estate like super cheap, and we always think to ourselves like, man, I wish I could buy like 3 houses for 50,000, but that will never happen again ever. And we're sitting here like, dang, that they were lucky they did this. Well, Bitcoin is our time. So a couple generations from now, people are going to be saying, you guys could have bought one Bitcoin. Like you could get one Bitcoin, and that will never be the case again. Yeah. And so that started ringing in my head, like, this is my opportunity. I can't pass this opportunity up. So then I think when right before Elon Musk bought Bitcoin, so when it was like 15,000, I do day trading, and I've been training with a professional day trader for like 5 years, and I respect this guy like tremendously. And he's picked so many. He's been in finance since like the early '80s, and he's picked so many like winning opportunities. And he said, hey, Bitcoin. He said Bitcoin is the equivalent right now of like back in the day when you could buy a New York City block, like way back, those guys who started that. Yeah. He said that's what Bitcoin is like. And so when it hit 30,000, I was like, man, dude, I missed it, man. I missed it. I'm out of it. And he said, just think of 30,000 being like zero, because that's the significance it is compared to where this is going. And something just clicked in me, and I was like, I'm putting everything I got into this.
What year?
That was in 2020. Yeah, it was because it was after the pandemic. Yep. Okay. That was in 2020. That I started really getting. So I was already into, like I said, stocks and stuff like that, but I started getting. I don't even. Well, I mess with equities a little bit. I day trade, but as far as investing, I don't mess with equities too much as far as investing, because again, I'm not rich, and you only have so much capital. You got to put it one place, and there's no better place right now to put your capital for investing than Bitcoin. I mean, real estate, gold, bonds, stocks, none of those are going to give you the return that Bitcoin is going to give you over the next 5+ years. Zero. Not real estate, not any of it. And you can't take your real estate with you, right? You can't go to another country and rip your house up and take it with you. It's you gotta that's the Bitcoin, the portability aspect. And I think you and I were talking earlier about, you go to these different places and you see the utility aspect. So one example is, if I wanted to just give you some money right now, if I wanted to send you $10,000 right now, I could go to my bank through ACH and get your account number or whatever, push it your way, and you still are not going to be able to use that $10,000 for a few days. It may be 7 days. They'll let you use, 1,000 or 2,000. They'll give you the privilege of using a couple thousand of your $10,000 for some days, right?
That's right.
But with Bitcoin, I can sit here right now, go to my phone, and you got the 10,000 right now. Like, and we didn't need anybody. I think that's a good thing, but that's also scary, because you got to think about, for every advantage to somebody, there's a disadvantage to somebody else, right? So think about the banks and the big Wall Street guys. they're kind of like, we can't let this happen. So that's the part. So just going on a different little tangent there. That's the part that scares me a little bit,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
these guys, they're not dumb, and they didn't become billionaires and have trillion and manage trillions of dollars by letting a piece of technology um, kind of defeat them. Now, do I think that they're going to be able to stop Bitcoin? No, I do not.
Yeah.
I do think they're going to be able to influence it, and I don't think anyone really knows what that means. It could be positive, for people like you and me that are early adopters, which is kind of where I lean. I lean that it's going to be positive for early adopters. It's not going to be as positive for people down the road, the masses. But that's why we're trying to get the word out right now so that everyone can be an early adopter, because you're still early right now. You're still early. You have about what, 12 months, I say, before the ship has left the station or the train has left the station completely.
Right. And to your point a little bit before we move, I think the powers that be are trying to get it. I think that's what the ETF effort is. I think they
Yes.
kind of recognize it now, and they're at least like,
Yes.
trying to get a piece of it as it, or maybe, there's a more cynical perspective that they could, try to be a little bit of the gatekeeper with that access. But we'll see. I think you're right. I think it's too decentralized and too big now. So maybe I kind of want to back up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You basically heard, you said you heard this Bitcoin thing. You're like, oh, that's going to be big. I think, what my kind of effort is, if there was one thing that sort of made sense to you about Bitcoin early on, that you said, well, maybe it's the portability, like
Right.
other, as opposed to real estate. Could you expand on what kind of clicked for you? Because I think a lot of people say, there's the typical like, oh, we can't use it, and to which I say, like, well, any technology that's reached its full potential or realized its full potential, it's not worth investing. That's not what anyway. So maybe go on, like, what clicked about it for you back then, whether it's your professional experience or you just knew these people,
It's kind of a couple of things. It's number one, my love for numbers, and then my understanding of the economy, and the sort of all that ties into the main thing, which is scarcity. So back when the government bailed those banks out, and even before they bailed those banks out, this is something that's been on my mind. Like, they print money. Like, you can't. I'm a businessman. I'm a good financial man. You can't make value out of thin air. So if you really think about a fiat currency, is really not even money, because true money is value absent debt. So the only thing on the earth that is like that right now was gold. Before Bitcoin was gold. Right. So fiat currency, they can just print it and print it and print it. Bitcoin has a fixed amount. Like, you can't print it anymore. And the guy Satoshi and whoever, it wasn't just one guy. I don't think. I don't want to take this onto a spiritual level, but I tell people, I just don't believe that any man by himself could have forethought all these things. There's just no way. There's absolutely no way they could have thought about something that would withstand all the scrutiny that Bitcoin's going through right now. Think about it, the most secure network. It gets harder every 4 years, which is the same cycle as the election cycle. It's gonna take like 100 and something years to go away. The first amount of it got locked up to make it a commodity. Like, there's so many things that, again, that's a whole different topic. But just to your point about how did I know that's what clicked on me, it's going to work, because you cannot make more of it. You can't. So even when the big guys come in, because I do agree with you saying earlier, this is what I think about the big guys. This was a novel thing at the beginning, like for nerds like me. And think about the big guys, like you were saying, with the medical doctors and things. They don't change fast. They got billions and trillions. They're like, oh, we don't care about this little technology software thing that someone built. And by the time they realized what it really was, it was the first time, I think, in history that the big guys were behind. And they were like, and because of the technology, they couldn't do nothing about it. Like, they couldn't shut it down. They couldn't change the code. They couldn't do nothing. So they're like, dude, we missed out. We got to do something. And so what are they doing right now? To your point, they're basically they're suppressing the price and and this is the beauty about the cycles, right? They can't stop the cycles from happening. So they know the same thing that we know. They know that every cycle it has to go up in value just by the nature of the program. So
Right.
they have a limited window, right? So they're like, man, we only got a few months to suppress this price, scoop up as much as we can because it's only going to get more expensive, and we can't do anything about that.
For
So
sure.
that's the piece where I'm like, I know it works because it cannot be manipulated. It's not controlled by anybody. And fiat currency, this is another Ponzi. I mean, they call it a Ponzi scheme, but this is something to really think about because I think people don't grasp this.
Yeah.
They're in their real estate. They're in anything that someone has that goes up in value. They feel like they gained value. So your house, for instance, someone has a house and they're like, man, my house was 100,000. Now it's worth 500,000. They're like, hey, my house went up in value. How is it that you bought your house for $100,000, this material item that literally is worse today than when you bought it, years ago, but you think it went up in value? It didn't go up in value. The dollar went down in value. That's what happened. So that money you had, that dollar you had back then, is now only worth like 50 cents. So that's what people have to really start changing their thinking and stop thinking that things valued in the dollar are going up in value. It's that the dollar is going down in value, and it will always go down against Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep pushing on this point because I think it'll help. This is what would have helped me. I told you a little bit my story. In 2017, I was just gambling on exchanges. I was arbitraging different exchanges. Yes. Had no idea about the technology. Unlike you kind of, it seems like you saw it and it kind of made sense. So scarcity, I agree with you. It's that's the point, right?
Yep.
That's why gold is the hardest, until Bitcoin, I think. What was it about? So scarcity is great, but what was it about, your background or whatever you saw in Bitcoin that made sense? Like, okay, that can't, be hacked, or that can't.
Yes.
That's a big thing.
Yes.
You open the book to somebody and you're like, yeah, it can't be hacked. It's immutable. And they're like, what does that mean? It's like, okay, I can copy paste like anybody, so why did it make sense to you?
Yes, that's a very good point because my brother was actually, again, in the conspiracy theory. He sent me this article about the SHA-256 algorithm that Bitcoin uses. He's like, the CIA created SHA-256. And I'm like, yeah, the government also created the internet. So like, just because you create something doesn't mean you got some backdoor into it. So basically, that's a good point you say, because you understand the technology. Now, I'm fortunate enough to understand the technology because crypto, which is short for cryptography, that has been around forever. Cryptography, and cryptography just means that you're able to mask a message with keys, and those keys kind of give you the key to unraveling the message to make it readable. And so it doesn't even have to be technical. This could be done on paper. It could be done with anything. It could be done with newspapers. They used to do that during the wars back in the day. So and SHA-256 is unbreakable, basically, by today's standards of computers. And when I say unbreakable, it means that let's say I had a word and I encrypted it, which is that the action of making it secure or making it unreadable. And you basically they call it, getting a little technical, but they call it hashing. So you take that word, you run this algorithm on top of it, and kind of just jumbles the word up into unreadable stuff. In order for modern computers to crack SHA-256, it takes something like 15 years of this thing cranking away at it, trying to crack it. So keep in mind, on the blockchain, you got the Genesis block of Bitcoin, which is the first block ever encrypted. And the beauty of the blockchain is every 10 minutes, a new block is getting added. Boom, boom, boom. And the further away you are from a block, the harder it gets to go in there and decrypt it. So it's almost impossible. And if you think about all the nodes that are out there that are securing the network, so the nodes are everyone's computers that are actually processing these transactions. There are thousands and hundreds of thousands of them, probably millions of them across the world. It's literally impossible to break Bitcoin. Literally impossible. And think about it. Bitcoin's been around since what, 2008. You think that no one's throwing everything they possibly have at it? It's a $500 billion asset in there. You think no one's throwing everything they have at it? So and that's why Bitcoin is the king, because it is the most secure. There is no other crypto that is more secure than Bitcoin. No other crypto.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, that's one thing that everybody goes through, and you have to sort of, I think I remember talking to my brother, and we got to that conversation. I was like, look, I've done the homework. I can't really answer it any better. Read these books, and it'll make sense to you. But that was really well articulated, because not everybody has the science background and the sort of technological background. And you said you were doing cryptography yourself.
I did it, yes, myself. Yes, I wrote it's cool because I wrote a program because I had to basically. I do software development. So in software development, sometimes we have to send information across the internet from one system to another system. So even though the protocol for sending things, it's encrypted itself, you also want to encrypt your package that you're sending. So I built algorithms to basically encrypt a package, send it across the wire, and then you give the keys to the partner that you're sending it to, and they're able to use those keys to decrypt it. So it's pretty much same process with Bitcoin, just more sophisticated.
Yeah. So that kind of leads me to my next question. So is Bitcoin the king? Because I think a lot of people do this sort of trajectory is you start with Bitcoin, and then you say, okay, that was the first mover. What's going to come next? And MySpace, Bitcoin, or that kind of.
Yes.
So is it the king, or what happens now? I think I want to know from your perspective.
So to me, with crypto, it's going to be like Apple and Android, Microsoft. There's going to be some top players, and think about it. Who were the top players in the .com space? It was Apple and Microsoft, and who's at the top still? Apple and Microsoft. Now there's a bunch of other players, but the top dogs, Apple and Microsoft. So I really feel like Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to be the top dogs. They're going to be around. Now, the good thing is Ethereum does not compete with Bitcoin. To me, Bitcoin store value, a medium of exchange. Like that's it. Like store value, transferring value. That's to me is Bitcoin. The Litecoin network is coming around. I don't know if I see Bitcoin as, and it could be. This could change because there could be things put on top of the Bitcoin framework to make this more possible. But sending things back and forth is kind of slow for doing and unless you're using the Lightning Network. So again, if the Lightning Network picks up, I can see that going. And then Ethereum is the utility token, and you see it's becoming just standard now for everything, for NFTs, all kinds of other tokens are built on top of Ethereum. Like it's that core. So look at Ethereum as the network. It's like the core network for utility of crypto. That's how I see Ethereum. So those two are going to be up there, and then you're going to have below those, you're going to have some kind of I forget what they call it, but the Odin chain or whatever, one of the technologies that bridges all the chain. And I think Chainlink right now is the biggest one. Now, I don't know, I'm not advocating Chainlink or anything like that. I'm just saying, as far as the type of use of crypto, I think these are going to be the spaces. It's going to be store value, utility network, and then integration network. And integration is actually my specialty in IT, but because integration just means you got Ethereum right now, you got things like Solana and these other, they don't talk to each other. They're their own networks. Somehow over time, you've got to be able to interconnect these things. And that's the integration network. And again, like I said, right now, Chainlink is the number one, not the only one, but it's like the number one. So I think there will be some shakeout there. And then, there'll be tokens for NFTs and all kinds of meme tokens, and that stuff will probably be around. But as far as the stable, Bitcoin, always king. Always king. It's going to be the king of crypto. You cannot reproduce Bitcoin. And look at Litecoin, right? Litecoin is a reproduction of Bitcoin, but it's nowhere near. You don't hear about it, right? You just cannot reproduce Bitcoin. It's the circumstances can never be reproduced again.
So it's kind of interesting, like hearing you talk about integration systems. Talk to me about some of the biggest, like in your field, what are some of the biggest obstacles and concepts with integration?
Oh yeah.
Does that make sense? Like
yes.
might be
Yeah, standards.
factors in a digital asset, world coming up. Does that make sense?
It's the same. It's going to be the same challenges, right? And it's always standards. So right now, what you're seeing, even in crypto, is you're seeing people fight to be the standard, right? So you got Ethereum came out as a level 2, and it was the first one, and then you got all these other tokens saying, "Hey, I can do it better than Ethereum." So I think Solana is a true level 1 token. So Solana comes out and says, "Hey," and even Cardano is a level 1. I can do it better than Ethereum. So everyone's fighting for the standards, and that's always going to be the problem. Period. Which is why Bitcoin is always going to be king, because once something is settled, once something is solid in technology anyway,
mm-hmm.
and it's adopted and it works, it's really hard to pull people away from it, because you're like, okay, why would I go there? This is working perfect, and it's just what I want. There's no reason to go anywhere else. This becomes the standard, right? So Bitcoin is the standard for a store of value, period. And all these other ones are going to be vying for that. So to your point about integration, is how do you integrate these? Is getting them all to kind of conform to some standard to help with that integration. That's always going to be the challenge.
Does that basically come down to, I would think, user experience and adoption, right? It's whatever the people, it's easiest to use, and people, I mean, that's kind of what happened with Facebook.
Yeah. So it's the technology. So I would say yes, user experience. Who can create the best user experience, and the technology, because blockchain is not. There's not one way to implement blockchain. You can. Blockchain is a thing that's been around forever, even before Bitcoin. So you can implement blockchain in a ton of different ways. So it's going to be like, hey, everyone kind of understanding like, hey, this is kind of the best way to implement blockchain. And like, sure, yeah, you can have your blockchain, I can have mine, but we're all going to have it in such a way that they can be interconnected, easily. Because to your point, no one wants to alienate themselves to where it's like, I have to pick one, because then it's like, well, wouldn't it be better if I can pick one, but also use yours if I wanted to for certain things? It's better for everybody. So I think they'll eventually kind of get to some kind of standard.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, Oliver Daniels, I think that'll do it for us, man. I appreciate your time. And, we'll schedule another one at some point and tackle a different subject. But thanks for your knowledge. And it's good to see you, man.
You too, man. You too. This is fun.